all about the money. In this edition of the Embedded Insiders, Brandon and Rich break down some major acquisitions like ARM's purchase of NVIDIA, as well as AMD potentially buying Xilinx, prompted in part by all the free money that's available in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Later, Jim McGregor, principal analyst at Curious Research, joins the insiders with his thoughts. He explains his belief that these moves are the result of companies trying to grow their total addressable market by capturing share in adjacent markets, but cautions that acquiring these assets could have negative long-term effects on the industry. In part one of a two-part interview, these questions are asked in the context of the NVIDIA ARM deal. Finally, Callista Redmond, the CEO of RISC-V, shares her vision of the computing industry after the world's largest IP vendor has been, at least for now, taken off the market. What does this mean for the industry in general, and RISC-V in particular?
Hello and welcome to the Embedded Insiders. I'm Brandon Lewis, Editor-in-Chief of Embedded Computing Design, and I'm here with Rich Nass, the Emir of Embedded, and Darth Vader's nephew.
Well, at least you didn't say son, because that would be Luke. So, and I honestly don't know who his. Well, wouldn't his nephew be one of Leia's kids?
Yeah, that's true. What's the guy's name? Kylo Ren.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so pretty big news crossed our desk this week, and who knows what's fake news, what's real news, and we'll probably get some sort of confirmation in the next few days. But $30 billion being laid out by AMD for Xilinx. I think it's awesome. I have this funny feeling you're going to say the opposite, so I'll let you go first.
I do not think it's good. And I'm only using the information I have at hand, which is what happened when Intel acquired Altera. It gobbled up Altera so deeply that, for half the time you didn't even know that Altera was, that they had FPGA technology. They started working it into their Xeon class processors, obviously for data center acceleration. But all of those lower, I guess they would technically be considered mid-range offerings that Altera had kind of just disappeared. And that means less options for developers, and that's never a good thing.
When the Intel Altera thing happened, I thought it was a fantastic thing for Intel. And I think that they have not been able to execute. And it still has the same potential there, but they just have not been able to execute and put something out the door. I think that AMD and Xilinx are in the exact same boat. And for the same exact reasons, I think it is a great thing for AMD. And I don't know the hierarchy of Intel as well as I do AMD. I have a little bit of history with Lisa Su, and I'm a very big fan. And I think that she would make this work. And I think that has the potential I think they have the potential to do what Intel was not able to do. And I think this just opens up so many doors to them. They really can be the number one player with this acquisition.
Why do you think that they have the potential to do what Intel didn't?
Well, as I said, I'm not as familiar with the layers of management that went into executing on the Altera programmable architecture within Intel. I don't know those people, and I don't think they've executed, and I don't know why, because I don't know the people. But I do know the people at AMD, and I think that those people will be able to make this happen.
Well, personally, I really don't care if it's good for AMD. I don't own any AMD stock. I care what the best thing is out there for embedded developers. Now, obviously, Xilinx has been making a really big push into all of the sexy topics that you hear about today. They've got 5G offerings, they've got data center acceleration offerings, they've got AI offerings, and on and on and on. And that's great for enterprise and networking. But, what about UltraScale Plus devices? What about the Zinc family? Are these AMD Ryzen chips going to be integrating programmable logic? if it's difficult to integrate that technology in a homogeneous environment like a data center, imagine what it's going to be like, the challenges you have putting it in a, you know, gateway class processor. It just seems like a steep hill.
I'm also on record as saying I'm a very big Zinc fan. I think that they hit a home run with that. Um, and I think if you put that in with the Ryzen architecture, there's nothing you can't do. If the thing they haven't figured out is how to do really low power. And if they can figure that one out, then you open up the embedded doors, which we would love to have them enter. But
Sure.
you know, that's the one place that AMD hasn't figured out. They're in embedded, out of embedded, in embedded, out of embedded.
Right.
And if they can get themselves in with a Zinc, oh man, that would be cool.
So you think Lattice is licking its chops right now?
Because they've taken Xilinx out of low power.
No, because if Xilinx gets acquired by AMD, the next FPGA provider I think of is Lattice.
Yeah, but who's it going to get acquired by? Who's left?
Who?
Lattice.
Nobody. I'm just saying that who's going to be the FPGA leader?
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But you know what else is interesting? We've talked about this a little bit, but NVIDIA recently has acquired ARM pending a billion different, pieces of
Dollars.
legislation. Many billions of dollars, and many and many billions of pieces of legislation and regulatory checks and on and on and on. And I don't know about this one either. What's your hot take on good, bad, ugly?
Well, definitely good for NVIDIA, not so good for the rest of the industry, because
Right.
I think when we talked about this last time, the idea of, yes, we'll play with everybody only works for a very short time. All of a sudden, you're not going to play with everybody anymore. And as we heard from the RISC-V folks, while they're not going to say they think it's awesome for them, that they're thinking it's awesome for them.
Right. Yeah, it's I agree. I completely agree with that. It's really tough to.
Well, hold on. What did you just say?
I said it's really tough.
No, before that. You said I agree with you.
I agree with you. I think it's really, I think it's, it's obvious. It's like when Intel acquired Wind River, right? Don't worry, we'll still offer VxWorks to all of our chip competitors.
But they do now.
Well, yeah, now that they've been spun back out, it's just really tough for, NVIDIA to go, because Intel had started licensing ARM cores and deploying them in some of their offerings, and that is obviously going to probably be no more. Then you got, the Qualcomms and everybody else. So it's really difficult to justify if you're AMD/Xilinx licensing ARM cores from NVIDIA so that you can both go after sockets in the same market. But, so why is all this happening? Why is everybody buying each other now?
I'm not in the financial sector, but it seems to be that money is readily available right now.
Yes, it's my theory is when the economy goes to the doldrums and interest rates drop, money becomes freer, and you might as well borrow cheap money as cheaply as you can and then do something with it.
Yeah, but I don't think these guys are borrowing the way that I understand the way these deals are coming through.
Well, like I said, it's probably going to be 18 months before we figure everything out. But yeah, you're right. There's a whole lot. And actually, this is just such a weird time in general because the stock market has been doing relatively well compared to the rest of the economy while interest rates are down. So there are just a whole lot of interesting factors at play here. But, maybe we'll see more. I remember a few years ago, we went through something similar. So maybe there's more on the horizon.
Yep. Well, in 18 months, when my cat is president of the United States, we'll see what happens.
Now, Jim McGregor, principal analyst at Tirias Research, joins the Embedded Insiders.
What's going on with all of these mergers and acquisitions now? I assume that a lot of it has to do with money being somewhat free, and obviously a lot of these companies trying to move into adjacent markets. For example, NVIDIA, well, I shouldn't say adjacent markets, but complementary portfolios. NVIDIA acquiring ARM or in the process of doing so, and then the talks about AMD and Xilinx have nice little complementary portfolios. Why do you think all this is going on right now?
I think there's kind of three things to this. We saw a similar acquisition wave in 2015 that was kind of kicked off with the IoT era, really with NXP's acquisition of Freescale, and it just led to a whole wave. Now we're seeing another one, but I think it's kind of three different things. One is the fact that everyone's trying to build up their TAM. They're running out of places to grow their market share. The markets aren't growing as fast as they were, so they're looking for adjacent markets, adjacent opportunities. And sometimes it's hard to do organically. Sometimes you need to acquire those assets, that expertise, and sometimes those customers just to be able to do that. And right now is kind of a perfect time. It's kind of a perfect storm when you have free money and you have high stock valuations. So you might as well take advantage of it. And that's why I think why we're seeing these big deals right now, with the ARM acquisition, potentially the Xilinx acquisition. And I would venture to say you're probably likely to see others do that. Big companies like Qualcomm and some of the other major players in the market are probably going to be looking at acquisitions here pretty quickly too. And I think the third reason we're seeing this is because of a change in the technology in the markets. Systems are becoming increasingly more complex, especially when you think of the fact that everything now has to have connectivity, everything has to have some kind of sensor information, it has to have some form of intelligence. That's really hard to do. And a lot of the OEMs aren't looking to build these systems from a collection of pieces. They're looking to these technology providers, these semiconductor providers, to provide a complete platform that's multiple chips, that's the entire bill of materials or reference design and the software that goes along with it. So, I mean, you can't just sell a chip these days. You really can't.
What you just described, Jim, reminds me of one of the acquisitions that was, I won't say under the radar, but more under the radar with Infineon and Cypress. I think that they're able to do what you just described in a really good way. Infineon wasn't able to do what Cypress can help them do. And now you have almost all the pieces of the system puzzle, and doing the air quotes around system. But that one makes as much sense as any of them.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at a lot of the acquisitions, especially around AI and ML, the vast majority of them are software. They're not hardware related. They're all, trying to acquire that software expertise, that platform level expertise. That's become really important. It's funny because we've been saying for 20 years that you almost need at least one software engineer for every hardware engineer. That's probably closer to 3 software engineers for every hardware engineer today.
But to be clear, you're saying that people are buying these hardware companies to get their software, right?
In a lot of cases, yeah. It's software, it's IP, it's expertise, and it's to be able to have a complete platform. I mean, Qualcomm's a good example. They wanted to build out their area in mobile. So they basically went and acquired all these little entities to be able to provide a complete RF front end. And I mean, that's taken them a long time, but now they're the only company that has a complete RF front end solution. Another good example, and this is kind of on the system side or the tool side, is Siemens. They went out and acquired, I think it was 12 or 14 different companies to build out just a simulation platform for building chips called Pave 360. And one of those was Mentor. So, I mean, it really is, trying to build up a solution that nobody else has.
Well, Jim, You brought up a couple of great examples there, which leads me to a question of, is this good for the industry at large? You know, you obviously this consolidation means that there are fewer options out there, and then maybe you have NVIDIA on the one hand saying, of course, ARM is still going to be licensed to all all of our competitors.
Sure it is.
Right. Um, so, you know, what do you think that this means for, what do you think that this means for actual developers? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
You know, it worries me. And what really worries me is starting about 5 years ago, we stopped seeing startups with a business plan to be an ongoing entity. All the startups now, or the vast majority of now, especially around semiconductors or silicon technology, all have the same business plan. That is, let's come up with something and sell it. I mean, that's they all have a plan to get out.
But at
And
the
that's their
same
plan.
time, a lot of the chip companies, the big chip companies are looking at it the same way. Rather than develop the, something internally, they wait for somebody else to do it and they acquire it.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of been the mode that we're in, and that worries me. You know, are we entering this phase of the mega chip company where we're going to get down to, a handful or maybe even two handfuls of chip companies and everyone else is out of the market? I don't know. It really concerns me because it's really those startups that create the innovation. And if they're reliant just on the idea of being someone's lackey eventually, that's not going to work out for the industry very well. Because with every major market transition, we see a couple of the big players fall and we see a couple of new players rise. If we don't have those new players there when we hit these major market inflection points, whether that's silicon technology, whether that's a change in new devices that everyone has to have, or whether that's just a change in the market. If we don't have those new startups, that innovation coming up from the bottom, it worries me that it may stifle it going forward.
So I want to zero in on this first on the NVIDIA ARM, and then a little bit later we'll touch on Xilinx and AMD. But that point, continuing it on in terms of innovation, what do you think that NVIDIA's plans with ARM are, or if you have any insight there? Because to your point about innovation, what happens to the fabless semiconductor guys? You know, that in the semiconductor space, that's where a lot of the innovation would theoretically come from, and now that a big massive player in that space has been gobbled up, and maybe there's less access, or maybe NVIDIA starts steering ARM technology in a different way than it has been in the past. So how do you think NVIDIA is going to handle this new toy they've got?
Well, let's face it, they're being very opportunistic right now trying to acquire ARM, and I can't blame them. I mean, to acquire a major process technology that accounts for the vast majority of all chips sold in the market today, I mean, billions of units a year. It's a great opportunity for NVIDIA. I don't see them messing with the ARM model. They're going to do everything they can to keep the customers happy. Will they continue to invest? I mean, obviously, they're really interested in the data center and automotive and a couple of other segments. Will they continue to invest in mobile and other areas that are critical to the ARM partners? That's hard to say. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it'd be foolish for them not to, because I mean, that is such a rich ecosystem, and that's the value. That's where the revenue is going to come from. If you don't invest in that, you're going to lose that opportunity, and it's going to open the doors for competition from Sci5 or other architectural solutions. Like the new Bionic from A14 Bionic from Apple, or the Samsung chips, or anything else. So if everyone's doing their own chips, we're kind of coming full circle again. So I think they're really going to try to leverage ARM for the data center for their own aspirations, but they need to continue investing in ARM for all those embedded applications, for all those mobile applications that ARM is known for.
But we're just sort of saying, I wonder if they're going to invest in mobile, continue to invest in mobile. Do you know the ramifications that would have if the answer is no? I mean, it's very far from a throwaway line. I wonder if they're going to continue to invest. I mean, that's what's really held the industry up for the last decade.
It is, and quite honestly, it would give NVIDIA. Well, let's face it, NVIDIA is going to use, if they can acquire ARM. There's still a lot of ifs there.
Right.
If they can acquire ARM, it opens up the door to a lot of areas that NVIDIA tried to get into, especially in the low power segment, whether it's embedded, like what's trying to do with its Jetson platform, which uses ARM cores, by the way, as well as mobile, which it tried and kind of failed at. It opens the door to a lot of opportunities for NVIDIA that they wanted to get into a long time ago, just really couldn't do it. So it's going to be interesting. I would expect that they're going to invest in it. Hopefully they still keep the ecosystem going strong without, competing too heavily against their own partners.
Now, Callista Redman, CEO of RISC-V, joins Brandon and Rich to continue the conversation.
Okay, Callista. I know that over the past couple of years, RISC-V technology has been integrated, or NVIDIA has looked at using it in various aspects of their technology stack. And now that NVIDIA's acquired ARM, do you think that may be the end of RISC-V's road, partnership with NVIDIA and some of their solutions?
I thought you were going to say the end of RISC-V.
Yeah. No.
I think RISC-V is well past the starting gate and gaining a lot of industry traction. With NVIDIA in particular, they've been one of our founding members, and even Jensen has mentioned publicly in his interviews that the path with RISC-V continues. Those aren't his words verbatim, you'd have to go look those up, but they are continuing to be fully committed to RISC-V, which is not surprising. NVIDIA has a track record of engaging many partners in innovation. They don't do things in an isolated island type fashion. They are ready to engage with partners and in the open source communities. In fact, prior to RISC-V, I worked with them closely on OpenPower. So they are a great corporate citizen when it comes to the open source and collaboration community.
They've gone out of their way to say that they plan to use ARM for AI applications. They want to create some AI super center in Cambridge. And I generally don't see RISC-V in that same space, at least in the short term. So I would think that they'll be pretty separate for the foreseeable future. And is that the same way that you see it?
Not at all. In fact, the European Processor Initiative has highlighted RISC-V specifically for AI acceleration. So if you look at the project funding going on in Europe, as well as other parts of North America and APAC, you do see RISC-V as a highlighted technology. It's very much a formidable option in AI as well. And great example in APAC is Alibaba. They are bringing RISC-V into their data center specific to AI and cloud applications.
Those were some obligatory questions, Callista, given your role at RISC-V, but I'd like to take a moment to get your view on the wider industry. What does it mean when two big players like this merge in the semiconductor space? Does it create power vacuums in certain areas? Is it good for industry? Is it bad for industry? A lot of times consolidation from the snap judgment can be like, well, that's bad. We have one less vendor to choose from. But what's your take?
So when you see large moves happen in any industry, first and foremost, please don't let this just reduce our options to only one, because that monopoly is good for no one, not even the monopoly itself, I would contend. I think every participant, every stakeholder is going to do two things. They're going to evaluate, what is this going to do for me? How does this impact my strategy, my near-term, far-term, or long-term product plans? They're going to do a couple of things with that, right? They're going to diversify their partnerships. They're going to ensure that they have freedom of choice. And they're going to also fortify those relationships that they have. They want to ensure they continue to have IP access, continue to have no barriers to entry in the markets they wish to participate in, continue to have choice when it comes to supply chain and innovation partners. So everyone evaluates these types of moves on how does it restructure or improve, in some cases, their relationships.
Some of the prominent guys in RISC-V, we should name names like Sci5, but have sort of gone on record as saying, wow, this is great for RISC-V because it takes ARM out of the way. Is that not true? I would think not.
For RISC-V, we look across our members and the investments that they have made in their current product lines, their old product lines that have legacy architectures and deep investments across many different architectures, right? Most folks have been looking first to RISC-V for those new workloads, that green space that they're going after and running after next, rather than ripping and replacing all of the prior investment. I don't know about you, but whenever I've gone to the boss or up my management chain to say, hey, you know what, I've got this really awesome new technology. Can I have a development team and a sales channel to go with it? They usually don't just let me do what I want without both a business case and a technical case. So you got to hit it on all fronts. And that's what all of our members are doing. I mean, there are some cases where ARM and RISC-V live happily on the same SoC. So I don't think this is oh, good, now someone's out of the way. I think this is an opportunity to do what's right for where you've invested already and where you are going forward.
An interesting point from those last two talking points. It looks like there are rumors that Intel's developing their own GPU, and now NVIDIA is acquiring, a CPU. But one of the funny things about this is, while it's obvious that both of these players are looking at attacking heterogeneous workloads, you're also in this age of AI where the workloads are kind of unknowns. There are a bunch of question marks around them, which, in my personal opinion, is a great reason for people to investigate a technology like RISC-V, because it's new, the workloads are new. You can, start building, you have these extensions that allow you to attack different workloads in different ways. So it's kind of funny to me that it's like there are all of these new workloads and these major established chip companies that are trying to go after AI sockets, et cetera, but they're going after them with existing technologies in sort of a brave new world. Do you think that this is going to open up a big space for RISC-V players in general?
I don't think rearranging the deck chairs is what's going to influence those new workloads and those new opportunities.
Right.
RISC-V has so many advantages as a innovative starting point from a technical perspective. I mean, you look at it from the instruction set perspective. We have like 47 instructions. Mm-hmm. Another leading architecture has like 1,500 in the base ISA. Mm-hmm. So you take that smaller instruction set, add on only what the pieces are that you truly need to tackle the challenge you're up against, and you can do so in a more efficient way, which can translate to both performance and power consumption and other variables. So RISC-V is a very compelling starting point for those new workloads. Why other companies may choose different starting points or different architectures may be creature of habit, or maybe that they have, another way to say that is, hey, I've got a swarm of engineers that already know this other stuff. Let's try that angle as well. I think the algorithm in which architecture you're going to pick has three variables, and it used to be all about price performance, right? So how much performance are you going to squeak out at what cost and price point? How many of those things can you stick on one wafer? And the third variable that is now become a reality for these new workloads that are very power constrained, you have to work within a very tight envelope, is flexibility. How many of those barriers can you knock down and get out of the way in order to have the flexibility within the technology to do what you're trying to accomplish?
For sure, especially as, like you alluded to, these algorithms, there's a new AI algorithm or type or algorithm architecture out like once a month. There's CNNs, and then there's RSTNs, and then all of a sudden everything from a hardware perspective that was, hot and sexy, 6 months ago is now passé. So
yeah, well, I've got really good news for you. There is not a new architecture that comes out every month. So we are still the new kid on the block, and I think we got a lot of promise there.
That's great.
So you opened one of these doors that I wasn't going to go down through, but since you started it, what's most important for any new architecture is the ecosystem. And I still hear that the RISC-V ecosystem has a lot of issues. It isn't workable yet. How long is it going to take? And I know it's still new, and I know ARM's been around for probably better than 25 years now. But how long will it take to really to where people will stop talking about the needs of the ecosystem?
I think depending on where you stand in the industry, whose logo is on your paycheck, you may always say that. You know, that may always be your position. However, I think we're accelerating very fast in ramping up the ecosystem, whether it's around tools and other resources to design and move your chip into tape out, or it's software that runs on that stack. We are building out, a profiles approach to that very problem, and we're doing so across, very standard workloads and giving our best recommendations there. We today have around 2,000 people that are working across 43 different work groups. That's about double where we were at the beginning of the year. We're also seeing similar traction, across all of our membership categories. So we are continuing to ramp the momentum, and I think you're going to see many more of those gaps filled out across the next 12 months.
Okay.
That's great. Calista, is there anything coming up on the RISC-V front that our listeners should be aware of? And I know that we have a bunch of virtual technology conferences and days, and I think one of them just happened. Is there another one on the books?
Yes, there is. So we had our global forum on September 3rd. You can catch up on all the very current information from those videos. Coming up December 8th, 9th, and 10th is our annual summit. So that will be fully virtual. So we'd love to bring folks in for that.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Embedded Insiders. For daily industry news, videos, and podcasts, visit our website, embeddedcomputing.com.